We are live. It's Alan's Movie Talk. I am back at it again. I'm here again with my lovely wife. Say hello,
Hi.
Caitlin.
Hello.
Hello. Uh, yes. We are back to talk about Dexter. This is our part two. Last week, obviously, we only got through the first four seasons and we went an hour and a half. For me, obviously, last week was a lot of positivity when talking about those first four seasons.
hmm
So now that we are talking about the back half seasons today, we're going to get a little bit more negative. Um, I don't think we hated the back half seasons as much as a lot of people did,
Yeah.
but not as positive as we were on those first four seasons. So we're going to go season by season like we did on the last show and kind of break down, plot details, what we thought, what we liked, what we didn't like. And then I'll just ask you before we start. I mean, were you the same way? Because, like I said, I heard a bunch of people say that the back half seasons were just a drastic fall off. Which in certain aspects I thought so, but in others I didn't.
I mean, I didn't really hear anything about the show in
So there.
general before I started watching it. So I don't know. I never really heard the public's, idea of the show and what they thought of it. So I kind of just went into it without any bias, and I just have my opinion. I do think
Okay.
in the second half it was not as good as the beginning of the show, like the first half of Dexter. So, I mean, I agree with the masses, but I don't know. I didn't, I didn't read any spoilers. I didn't, go online before I watched this show to get general ideas because it's how you always get ruined on a show. So I kind of wanted to go into it blind and not know what was going on.
Okay. I'm sorry. I am having some internet issues here. Hold on one second. I did not hear. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Can you hear me?
Okay. I can hear you now. I did not
Okay.
hear most of what you just said, truthfully. Um, I think I heard you basically that you were talking about, how you didn't really have a lot of expectations,
Yeah.
going in because you didn't hear all of the negativity that kind of surrounded those later seasons.
hmm
Um, so, me, I'm chronically online. So I definitely heard
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But I, like I said, end result, I felt that it's not near as bad.
Yeah.
Okay, give me 1 second here. Sorry, if anyone can hear me, we are having some technical difficulties at the moment.
Technical difficulties. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. Are we back?
I think we're back. Can you hear me good in current time?
Yes. A little bit of a delay, but that's okay.
Okay.
All right. So,
But yes, I didn't know much going into the show, so I mean, I kind of just went with it. But I do agree
yeah,
that the second half kind of falls off compared to the first half, which was really good.
yeah. Like I said though, I don't think it's as drastic as some people said. Obviously, Showtime had Shameless as well, and I felt like
Yeah.
when you get into the back half seasons of that show, it was much worse of a fall off than what we got with Dexter.
Yeah.
So for me, there was still a lot of enjoyment in the back half of the show for me. In
hmm
particular, season that we're going to talk about in this stream that I felt like was really a good season that offered a lot of good. Um, so with that, with general thoughts on those back half seasons, we'll kind of start to get into a season by season breakdown. We can start off obviously with season 5, where we left off, at the end of our discussion, and where season 4 left off, very devastating cliffhanger with
Yeah.
the death of Rita. And I will say, even though I'm not too high on season 5 as a whole, I definitely feel like this is where some of the issues started to reveal themselves. I felt like that first
Mhm.
episode in particular was really strong, really emotional,
Mhm.
and was a great like follow-up episode to the end of season 4, where we get Dexter dealing and reeling from the death of Rita, and
Mhm.
being in shock essentially, and he walks out onto the front lawn, and Deb and Quinn and everybody from Miami Metro comes and tries to console him, um, and he basically just utters out the line, it was me, and that kind of sets in a certain events and certain motions where Quinn gets a little bit suspicious of him, and kind of sets up some of the storylines with that going forward for the season. Um, and then we get into some of the back half, or I'm sorry, the flashbacks that they showed us of when Rita and Dexter first met.
Mhm.
How did you feel about that when they were kind of given that, and like where did you think that went for you?
I liked the flashbacks. It's like it was kind of sad because like you're still like coping with the death of Rita. But
Yeah,
then you get to look at it and it was like even when they first met, he was so just not interested. He was on the hunt. He was on the
yeah,
hunt for the kill. And
yeah,
it's like in hindsight, you're like, oh wow, like
yeah,
it's kind of funny because it's just like he's always prioritized the kill and like the
yeah.
hunt
Over her.
and
Yeah,
over her from
yeah.
day one. Like it's
Yep,
never
I
she's never
agree.
been a priority for him. So I
Yeah,
thought that was really interesting how that happened. And like you said with like the front lawn scene, I think that was a really good scene. Like it
yeah,
reeled in. I was like, I thank God they did it that way because I feel like if they would have just like washed over all of that after like it would have just been not good. So,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
I,
I think I thought to 2 points, to what you said. With the lawn scene, it was like I thought that was a great way to kind of show for the, with him being a sociopath and not really having
mhm.
emotions towards anyone, that
Yeah.
that was a good scene to show that like this is the first thing in his life that essentially just has him in complete shock.
Yeah.
And that he really just didn't know how to react. He was like like I said in the first 4 seasons, every single season wrapped up in a bow. And
Mhm.
for season 4, to end the way it did, it was like this was the
Yeah.
first time Dexter took a loss.
Mhm.
Um, and then what you said about the cafe scene where it was like their first date and everything. Like you said, it kind of shows that he was really more focused and cared more about the hunt and the kill.
Mhm.
But it also showed you too that like they had chemistry right from the beginning, even though that wasn't his intention. Like Rita wasn't, someone he knew he was going to fall in love with or really cared about in
Yeah.
that moment. There was chemistry between
Mhm.
them two, and it, kind of tugs at the heartstrings in
Yeah.
that moment, and gets you emotional about the loss of Rita,
Mhm.
and makes you realize like, God damn, like this is really the end. Like there's no
Yeah.
more Rita. So yeah, I thought that
Yeah.
was very, very well done as well.
Mhm. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then you just like get introduced really to like Jamie's character more so like in the season, isn't it?
Well, I was gonna
No,
say she doesn't come
it's
in
the
until
next season.
season 6. If you remember right, it was
It was the Irish
like
nanny.
the Irish nanny, yeah, who,
Yeah.
I know it's kind of a couple episodes into the season, but
Yeah.
her getting upset with Dexter and ending up quitting because of the fact that, he just likes to disappear for
Yeah. Like he
days
just
and
has this
hours at a time,
it's not
it's
really like reliable when you're a parent and you have a child. You can't just like be gone for days on end with like no
yeah.
question, you know? And it's like
Yeah, exactly.
in that aspect, I think the showrunners realized that like killing off Rita was kind of bad for the show because it was like, now we have this kid. What do we do with him?
Yeah. Yeah, it was like they didn't know what to do with Harrison at that
Yeah,
point, right? It was like he was kind of just an obstacle. It was like, oh, now we have this, block essentially to progress the
yeah,
plot and let Dexter do whatever he wanted to do. Because before, like you
mhm,
said, we had Rita, right? She was always with the kids, so it made sense
yeah,
that when Dexter would go off and go on his, just a scout or anything for his kills.
Hmm.
Rita was with him, so it was
Yeah.
okay. It wasn't too big of a deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that that's part of that, and then obviously too, like I had talked about, Quinn is really the only one of the Miami Metro characters that were close with Dexter. That kind of has a little bit of a suspicion. I think he has a conversation with LaGuerta, and he talks about how usually when there's a murder like this, we have to look at the husband. That's usually where we
Yeah.
go. But she obviously tells him to back off.
Hmm.
And at that point, that is when I don't know if it's right at the beginning of the season, but I know eventually he ends up enlisting the help of Stan Liddy, the kind of what seems like to me corrupt detective,
Yeah.
or at least former detective, because I know he gets in trouble and everything.
Hmm.
Um, but a private investigator that he hires essentially to kind of look into Dexter because he can't
Yeah.
anymore, and obviously later on down the line, that creates attention and creates a storyline that comes to a head at the end. Um, and then also too, we get that scene which I thought was very effective, where after Rita dies and he goes to I think he takes his boat and he ends up landing somewhere, and he's in the bathroom with the guy who is kind of a dickhead, and
Yeah.
he ends up just like brutally murdering him in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And then Harry's like, hey, um, this is the most emotion that I've seen from you essentially since she died.
Hmm. Yeah.
I thought that was a really like poignant emotional
Yeah.
moment, like, and Dex realizing like I actually did come to care about Rita, and
Hmm.
from this point on, I think, at least in my mind, I took it as like, hey, like the Dark Passenger is never going away. It's just going to get worse from here, and we're not. This isn't going to be a happy ending. That's just where we're
Yeah.
at with the show.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. It was just his dark passenger felt like he really truly failed Rita.
yeah,
And, like he did care about her. It's like it's hard because I like go back and forth with like, did he truly love Rita or did he just care about her? And it's like
yeah,
in hindsight, I really just feel like he truly deeply cared about her, but I don't know if I would go as far as to say truly love. Like he did not like with his entire being love her. But,
yeah,
he felt like he just did like she was such a good person and such a good soul and she deserved better and like he couldn't live with the fact that like he felt guilty for everything that went wrong with Rita. And that
yeah,
kind of gets us into, where the season goes
yeah,
and the storyline.
yeah.
Like
I
it's like
think yeah, yeah, and so yeah, that sets up. He starts hunting for a new victim essentially after the death of Rita. He kind of wants to get back into it, and then he ends up, meeting or finding Boyd Fowler, who he
Mhm.
realizes is murdering women and dumping their bodies in a creek.
Yeah.
So he kind of does his usual thing where he scouts out the victim, learns about him, figure out
Mhm.
where he's gonna kill him. I mean, this is all within an episode, and then essentially he gets Boyd in his house. He does what he normally does, sets up the kill room in his house, ends up putting him on the table, ends up killing him. But then when he does kill him, Lumen Pierce, the main kind of love interest that's introduced in this season and the main driving force behind the plot, ends up seeing him, kill Boyd.
Mhm.
So, and you could tell when he kills Boyd that she's kind of interested in like a curious way, after everything that she had been through with being kidnapped, being tortured. So, for me, I liked, I'll say, as the whole season, I did like the dynamic that Lumen brought to Dexter.
Mhm.
I don't think she was like my favorite love interest per se,
No.
but I just liked finally seeing Dexter with a love interest who basically knows who he is from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I felt like that kind of opening that you know Pandora's box of them knowing was a cool little wrinkle that they added in. Um, so yeah, I mean, how did you feel overall with that storyline and with Lumen as a character when it comes to Dexter?
I liked Lumen. It's hard because it's like they really weren't like love interests, It was more of like a we have a job we have to do. Like they were like partners
Yeah,
in crime more so. So,
Yeah.
people always want to compare like Lumen on the list of Dexter's women, and it's like, yeah, I guess you can put her there, but like
I think they got there towards the end,
they
right?
got
It
there
wasn't.
towards the end, like there was
Yeah.
like a caring there, and he was happy that he was able to help her in her journey in the
Yeah.
season. But um Lumen, I liked her. I liked that she had her like vengeance that she wanted, and she,
Yeah.
by the end, it's like she got them.
Yeah. Yeah, and then eventually, it's revealed. Once they meet, he kind of kidnaps her. Essentially, I mean that's what
Mhm.
happens. He locks her up
Yeah.
in a room because he's like, "Hey, I don't know who you are. You saw me kill. I don't know what's going on here." And she tries to escape a couple times, but he gets her back. And then eventually, they get on good terms with one another. And then we come to discover, that Boyd Fowler wasn't the only person involved with these murders and with the girls, with the girls being kidnapped, excuse me, sorry, and killed. That it wasn't just Boyd, right? Like
Mhm.
there's more. She identified that there was multiple men that were doing terrible things to her, and
Yeah.
so we realized that, hey, this is a group thing, and we start to kind of get introduced to some of the people who are part of the Barrel Girl gang,
Yeah.
and this is kind of where for me, I start to get a little negative on Dexter as a show as a whole, because for me, that back half of seasons, the villains of the shows aren't really all that strong,
Yeah.
or at least they're not as good as they were in the first four seasons. Like
Yeah.
you get Jordan
Mhm.
Chase, you get Boyd Fowler, all them. I didn't really find them as menacing or care about the
No.
storylines as much as I did
Mhm.
early on. And like I said, that's kind of an issue with all the back half seasons, is that the villains aren't really great.
Yeah.
I didn't really like Jordan Chase. He was kind of just a
No.
weird, like, in modern days, it's kind of funny because there's a lot of like self-help alpha
Mhm.
males like Jordan Chase nowadays, so it's
Yeah.
kind of funny in today's setting. But
It's like
yeah,
the
in the show I
MLM,
was like,
market, of all the
yeah,
guys, like,
yeah,
"Come on,
all
man,
the
you could better
pyramid
your
schemes,
life.
yeah, yeah,
Buy my shake.
yeah, come to my seminar where I help
I'll
you out
change your
with whatever you
life."
got. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, that's funny how that's kind of like, turned, because even that, like, later seasons was a while ago, like, it wasn't,
yeah,
recently.
yeah, yeah. I think like
Um,
the final four was like 2009 to 13. So
yeah.
we're talking over 16 years ago where it started.
Mhm.
So yeah, yeah. I just found that funny that was like, oh
Yeah,
well,
still
yeah,
relevant.
yeah. Still, if anything, it's more relevant today.
Yeah. I
Truthfully,
mean, like you said, I really didn't find, like, the villains as quote unquote, I guess, like
yeah,
that antagonistic. They weren't like
yeah,
that scary. They weren't that, not that they're meant to be scary, but I just didn't care for them like in the later seasons, especially like
yeah.
this season. I will say I preferred the storyline over the others that are to
Yes,
come.
yes.
So
I
like
think,
this isn't that bad in comparison. Like I enjoyed
yeah,
it. I thought it was like interesting that there were so many people like
yeah,
involved. Like there wasn't just like, okay, there's one bad guy. Like you had five bad guys that you had to go
yeah,
get, and they're all so different and live different backgrounds, different lifestyles. So like
yeah,
that was interesting. And there was definitely parts that I thought were like so freaking funny. Like the
yeah,
dentist scene. Okay, like
yeah,
that
yeah,
was funny. And it's like
yeah,
there's so many like different, things to this like season that I did like.
yeah. Yeah, I think for me, like the positives of this season is more associated with the storyline of like
Yeah.
Dex accepting Rita's death,
Yes.
getting a new kind of companion and a partner in Lumen who can also relate to tragedy,
Mhm.
on
Yeah.
the level that Dex did, and then just their revenge mission essentially that
Yeah.
he
And
ends up
he's like
taking Lumen on.
self-healing from this.
Yeah, they both are, right? Because I mean,
Yeah.
Lumen was tortured and I think raped. I don't remember if she said that
Yeah,
specifically,
she
but
was.
yeah, there was like a whole lot of bad things that happened to her.
So it's
So,
like they both healed from this, and it's like they
yeah,
gained so much from one another and like friendship. That's I really
yeah,
feel like they had like a true friendship,
yeah,
like
yeah,
more so than like a romance.
yeah.
Like at
I
the
think
end
it
of the
just,
day,
I think it butted into a romance just like out of
yeah,
circumstances, just because of like
yeah,
passion and like,
yeah,
especially with Lumen, because like shit, this is all new to her. This
yeah.
wasn't, like Dex has been there, done this,
They
before, but
trauma bonded.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. I mean, that was what it was. They both had a common
Yeah,
upsetting event in their recent life that they
yeah,
decided to take out together,
yeah,
and bond over, like you said. So So yeah, they obviously, become partners. They start tracking down, all the members of the Barrel Girl. I'm sorry, the Barrel Girl gang. They
Mm-hmm.
start tracking them all down, one by one. They start killing them off, and that I felt like was a cool dynamic. Because this was
Yeah.
kind of pretty much since Miguel in season 3, this was like the first time that like Dexter kind of has to like train someone and like kind
Yeah.
of push them and show them how to do this and do it the right
Mm-hmm.
way. Because like at
Yeah.
first, I remember the scene where she walked into like the homeless area where all the homeless people
Mm-hmm.
were staying that she thought one of them
Yeah.
was at, and she was like rolling up with a gun, like ready to just shoot him in broad daylight. Dexter's just
Yeah.
like, hey, like
Can't
we
do that,
can't do
girl.
this. Like we're not going to be able to get all of them if you're in jail. So yeah, so they eventually they start taking off people from the girl barrow gang and start killing them. And then
Yeah.
anything else you want to add? Because I was kind of gonna start to move on more.
No, we're good.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So then obviously, like I said earlier in the season, Quinn has his suspicions of Dexter, and he ends up hiring private investigator Liddy, and he kind of starts figuring things out, putting pieces together, and then while that's happening, this is the season where Quinn and Deb start having a relationship, and
Mm-hmm.
end up dating in this season. So as the season progresses and he gets into the relationship with Deb, he kind of starts to like pull back and be like, hey, like stop investigating this. Like I don't want to blow this whole situation up. I don't know if it was that he did know about Dexter and just didn't care because he loved Deb, or it was just like, hey, I don't have enough here to prove that it's Dex in order to blow up what I got going on with Deb.
Honestly,
Um,
I feel like it's a little bit of both. Like he wasn't a stupid guy and he worked narcotics and things like
yeah,
that. So like and he was kind of crooked himself in like his past. So it's like, with him, I think he had a good eye for people and a good like
yeah,
sense on people. And I think he knew what Dexter was to an extent. But he
I
loved Deb
agree.
so much that like he would rather pick her and do the crooked thing and just not say anything because he
Yeah,
figured, well, he's not hurting anybody that's worthy, so who
yeah,
cares?
yeah. And yeah, I think he always knew. At least like in this season, he kind of started
Yeah.
to figure things out. But like you said, I think it was just one of those things where like, hey, everything was going good with Deb at that point, and he didn't want to ruin that, right?
Yeah.
He was falling in love with her. He,
Yeah.
eventually proposes to her, and then that all goes down. So he didn't want to, continue to kind of prod that. So then, yeah, he, Liddy on his own, basically after Quinn tells him, "Hey, back off. We're not doing this anymore." He ends up basically just going on his own. He's like, "I'm gonna figure this out for my own gain to try to get back in with the police department." And I just realized, is this the season where LaGuerta and Batista get together?
Yeah. It was just like
Okay.
randomly thrown in
Yeah.
at the
Okay.
beginning of
So
the season.
yeah, we totally forgot about that because
So
I
Liddy
always
lost his job because LaGuardia was working in undercover for the police department because they thought Liddy was being, shady and something with drugs. So she went in and found him
I think
selling
it was a
drugs.
prostitution sting,
It was
if I
some
remember
sort of a
correctly.
sting,
Yeah, it was
and
some
she
type of
caught
sting he
him
got
on it.
busted in, and she
He ended
did
up
that
losing his job,
because Batista had
gotten
beat up the
into a
one
bar
guy
fight.
at the bar. Yeah, that's
And
right.
he was going
That's
to get
right.
charges pressed on him. So she wanted to
Yeah,
save her new husband, which was like totally thrown on us, but that's beside the point.
that was so random,
It was so
so
random. We
random.
just like
Yeah, it
turned
was
on like the TV and then like Batista
Batista. Yeah, they were
and
together.
LaGuardia are
Like,
married. And
yeah,
then we had
and
to live through so many seasons of Angel. It was like she called him
Angel,
Angel
Angel. Yeah,
for so
she
long.
called him Angel. Yeah,
And then all of a sudden we go to Angel.
yeah. So they're
I'm
together.
like, I wouldn't
Yeah,
have a problem if like that's what she always called him, but like, why the sudden change up? Why the sudden
yeah,
marriage out of nowhere? Like,
yeah.
the
Well,
showrunners was really trying to pull something out of nowhere.
to be fair, if you remember, they didn't get married right away. They ended up
No,
only getting married because Detective Matthews ended up finding out about it, and some got messed up somewhere. I don't remember specific
they didn't put
details.
in the stuff to HR to let them know that they were in a relationship to like separate
Yes.
them
Yeah.
because she
Yeah.
was the superior, and so it got
Yeah.
like nasty. Like they shouldn't have done
Yeah.
that, so they
Yeah.
just married each other for like the convenience. But
Yeah.
still, it just seemed weird
Yeah.
that
It was very thrown in there. Now, I didn't mind it because I actually thought that they had pretty good chemistry, and I
Yeah.
thought them as a relationship worked and kind of made sense from character
Mhm.
perspectives. Because we didn't really talk about it too much in the later seasons of season 1 through 4. But like LaGuerta as a character at this point, at least, was kind of making a turn and was becoming more likable.
Yes.
Obviously, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but I think that got reverted in the back
Yeah.
half of the show. But I kind of liked, I liked them being together, but I also felt
Mhm.
like it just happened
It was so
very
rushed.
quickly. Yeah, it was just out of nowhere. They're like, oh, yep,
Yeah.
we're having a relationship, and they didn't really dive into it or
Yeah.
develop it in any
Especially
way.
because they developed his relationship with, like, the, other cop the past season, and then this season, they're just like, "What happened? Oh, we broke up. Anyways, so I'm dating LaGuerta now." I
Well,
was like,
I th-
"Oh."
I want to say that happened in season 3, where he was
Yeah.
with the Vice girl, but then they
Mhm.
broke up, and I think he was single, basically for all of season 4,
Mhm.
and then it was like right at the beginning of season 5 is where they kind of
It was
just
just
dropped
a
it
jump
in.
scare.
Yeah,
I
it
wasn't
just like
ready. I was like,
they just
"Okay."
dropped it in, and they're like, hey, we're together now after all this time, and
Yeah.
no real setup, and like yeah, there was maybe little things here and there, but nothing
Yeah.
crazy.
We're kinda getting
So yeah,
sidetracked with that.
yeah, you're good. We forgot to bring that part up because obviously
Yeah.
that was a big part of why Liddy was investigating
Yeah, because he wanted back his
Dexter.
job back because he
He
lost his
basically wanted
job.
him way back in. Yeah, so he said, "Hey Quinn, I don't care what you say, I'm going back." And then eventually we get to the head of that, like that coming to a head, and he ends up kidnapping Dexter, which
Mhm.
was kind of crazy. That
Yeah.
he got, of all people to get the upper hand on him, it was Dexter.
Mhm.
And then, if I remember correctly, he said he was going to pay him for the evidence. And then he
Mhm.
just ends up killing him in his van. Um,
Yeah.
and then, Quinn ends up becoming directly implicated in that because he shows up at the van because he's like, he can't get a hold of Liddy and he just thinks something
Yeah.
suspicious is going on, and they find his van. And he gets there, and I think there was like blood was coming from the car. He ends up stepping in it, so that kind of
Dripped
implicates
onto his
Quinn.
shoe.
All right, that's what it was. Yeah, it dripped onto his shoe. And then I think it's LaGuerta who ends up seeing it, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and
Um,
she's like, "You
yeah,
said you weren't here."
yeah.
And
So
he's like, "Damn."
yeah, so that ends up, implicating him in that, which we'll get to. Like at the very end of the season, we find out what happens with that, and it kind of ties back in with Quinn again. Um, and then so we get into the later of the season. We're getting into the showdown with Jordan Chase. At this point, we get all of his backstory. We get who he is, and everything. And Lumen gets captured by
Mhm.
him. And then they end up having the final face off, and Lumen, or I think Dexter ends up killing him. Or no, I'm sorry, Lumen kills Chase originally. Um, you know, Basically fulfilling her whole revenge plot and everything like that. And then we get the scene, which this scene I had some issues with, where they're behind the tarp after they kill Jordan Chase, and
Mhm.
Deb walks in, and they stay behind the tarp, but because Deb the whole season has kind of been agreeing with what they were doing after finding out who the whole gang is,
Mhm.
she essentially just lets them go,
Yeah.
but you don't get she doesn't find out who's behind, the tarp, her being her
Yeah.
brother and Lumen. And for me, I felt like this was not like this should have been the moment where Deb found out, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think extending it a whole season uh, didn't really do much of anything for the plot because we end up at the same place literally the very next season,
Yeah.
in season 6, and I feel like we could have just got to that a little bit quicker. And again, that's kind of some of my issue with the back half seasons is that like we kind of dragged things out a little bit, dragged
Yeah.
our feet, didn't really get to the point like we did in the
Mhm.
first 4 seasons.
Yeah.
Um, so I was a little disappointed with that. What
Yeah.
about you? What did you think about that?
Um, I definitely agree. She should have found out sooner. I
Yeah,
feel like it was just kind of like, I mean, I get kinda why they did what they did, but
it was a
not
Baltese.
really. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah,
exactly
it
what
was
it
a
was.
tease. It was a tease because it was like you thought like, oh, this is
Mhm.
it. Like Deb's gonna
Yeah,
finally find out, and like we're gonna
and then
see.
they're just like, "Nope."
No, yeah, and
Yeah.
and like I said, we luckily had the benefit of binging this years later and saying,
Yeah.
hey, okay, we can move on and we can just go to
We
the
can
next
move
season
on.
and get the story.
Yeah.
But people who watched it live, I'm like, that's got to be like the biggest tease
Yeah.
that you could have possibly got. I'm like, Jesus, that
Mhm.
was, and not a
Yeah.
good one, right? Like at least last season
No.
it was a good tease,
Yeah.
with the death of Rita and everything leading into season 5. But this one was just kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
I feel like we're taking our time with it.
We were.
Yeah, and then so at this point they kind of set it up that Lumen and Dexter were in a relationship, or at least we're getting towards that. But then when she
Mhm.
kills Jordan Chase, she kind of just says, "Hey, now that I've avenged my peeps, I don't really want to
Sure.
continue doing this. This is not
No.
something that I see myself doing forever, like you.
Yeah.
So I gotta leave." Now, me personally, knowing the backstory and the history of
Mhm.
everything that
That's
happened
more
with the cast and crew, kind of makes me think
explains
that
a lot.
that's really why she ended up leaving and just
Mhm.
deciding that she didn't want to kill anymore on a whim.
If anyone wants to find this information out, please go to Google and find out
Yeah,
the tea
yeah, it was a lot
regarding
of
the real
the
life people.
real actors, who play Dexter, Deb, and Lumen. I'll just leave it there.
Do your research.
Anyone who's watched the show probably knows already what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, I think, the reason that they did that
Yeah.
personally. So then you get the ending. He's obviously heartbroken over her leaving. And then they end up Dexter ends up like clearing Quinn, of Liddy's murder and
Mhm.
straying them away. I don't remember exactly what he
Like,
specifically did.
I mean, I basically think that Dexter fudged the DNA results and was like, huh.
That's what it was. Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was like, oh, he didn't do it.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
guy would never do that. Okay.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
clear. And
He
then
pretty
just
much
like
like,
from that
hey,
moment,
you
they were
look
like,
out for
all right.
me. I'm looking out for you.
Yeah.
We have an understanding here.
Yeah.
And
He was
yeah.
like, from that moment, they were pretty cool. Like, they didn't really have like beef. He was like, all
Yeah.
right, I see you.
Yeah. And then also, too, we didn't touch on, him and Deb were dating. And then he does propose to her and everything. And then she, flat out says, or she like doesn't decide at first. And then that ends up leading to them breaking up, at the end of this season. And then that kind of goes into the next season and lays the groundwork for where they are and everything. So we might as well just jump into season 6 because that's pretty much all the events of 5. So season 6 for me, overall, definitely one of the weaker seasons. I think once we eventually get to like a ranking of the seasons, this is going to be pretty low for me personally, and I think there's a multitude of reasons for that. So I'm pretty sure there was a time jump. Yeah, there's a time jump in this season. It was a year later. He's basically kind of figured out a little bit more of the single father life. And this is where we finally get the introduction of Jamie.
Jamie.
Yeah. Batista's magical sister that we just never knew about.
Of.
Yeah.
He has a
for 5
sister
seasons.
who's like in college and
yeah.
And mind you, Dexter like magically bought an apartment that I think was like behind his, and converted that into like that apartment into extra rooms for his house. So Harrison had his own little like crib, and his own little room and bathroom, and just to extend because they had to make it work.
And Jamie lived there.
Jamie basically lived there rent free, and she was Harrison's second mom. Because they realized the Irish nanny bitching all the time was not going to work.
Wasn't going to work, right?
We had to have Dexter be free.
Yeah, we just needed somebody who would watch Harrison at all times of the day, wouldn't ask any questions, wouldn't raise any suspicions about where Dexter is at all times.
We know that as much as Jamie was watching Harrison morning, day, night, holidays, weekends, like she had to have been getting paid good because she didn't complain not one time.
Yeah.
She's like, you want me to take him on vacation? Bet. You want me to take him to Disney World? Bet. I will take this child anywhere.
Yeah.
He spends the night.
Being a literal 24/7 nanny in Miami, I mean, you got to be making 6 figures.
You have to, like, honestly, like,
even though Dexter himself, Yeah, even though Dexter himself probably only makes six figures himself,
He
don't
saved a lot
really
of
know
money,
how
I
that
guess.
worked out. I guess, yeah, or maybe Rita's life insurance policy was pretty hefty.
Something.
I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, so that to me was kind of an example of the writing, starting to get
Yeah.
pretty weak, and we're not as clever as we were in the
Yeah.
early seasons because we've kind of just written ourselves into this corner
Mhm.
where we got to do something with Harrison. We got to have somebody who's always going to be there
Yeah.
for Harrison. Um, so yeah, so he starts getting, he's focusing on raising Harrison now, obviously as a single dad, and then we get the start of the Doomsday Killers.
Mhm.
Um, for me, one of the weaker villains, the pair of them, even though spoiler alert, there was only one. One of the weaker villains of the show. One of the storylines that I just didn't really care about whatsoever. And that one kind of ran at the same time with the brother Sam storyline. Which I felt as like character and writing for Dexter. At least the brother Sam storyline was developing him as a character.
Mhm.
With the Doomsday Killers, especially early on, I was just like, every time they came on the screen, I remember me and you watching those first couple episodes. We were like, oh my God, this is such a drag to get through. Nothing about
Yeah.
it's exciting. So,
The thing that got me is that, like, at first, I thought, like, this is gonna be, like, a super cool killer, like, they could do a lot with this, like, a lot of people with the Bible and, like, end of times, like, this could be something
yeah.
really cool, and, like, I thought the dopest part of the whole season was, like, when he did, like, the 4 horsemen and, like, the body on the, like, mannequin, like, sewed
Yeah.
part like, I thought, "Oh,
Yeah.
shit," like, imagine being, like, at a parade and you see that shit, like, that would be
Yeah.
crazy. So I was
Walking
like,
down the street.
"Wow,
Yeah.
this is gonna be good," and it
Yeah.
was just, like, such a letdown, like, it just kept
Yeah.
getting worse, and then you
Yeah.
had little Tom Hanks Jr. just, like, driving you crazy, and I don't know, it's just, like,
Yeah.
it started off and I was like, "Okay, this is gonna be good," and then it just kept getting worse and
Yeah.
worse
I
and
think
worse.
Colin Hanks's performance left
Yeah,
a lot to be desired. I mean, the guy
yeah.
basically was not intimidating for one.
No,
Like there was nothing about him that was
no.
intimidating. You knew if him and Dexter got into a room, we know who's walking out alive.
Yeah.
And then his acting ability was just not great. And
I've never s Yeah.
the story that they were setting up just wasn't great. It wasn't interesting. It
No.
yeah, when you got them in a room,
Mhm.
Professor Geller and Travis Marcel, it was like I just didn't care. None of it was intriguing to me.
I know you
So
said that, like, Colin Hanks was in a lot of things in, like, the early 2000s, like, I've never seen
yeah,
him in anything but this, like,
yeah, yeah,
even
yeah.
still, and I'm like, I wasn't that impressed." He just, like and it's like, he just reminds me of his dad.
He
Like,
looks just like
he
yeah,
looks just like him, and he just,
yeah.
like, acts like such a soft, sweet and I get that's, like, the kind of, like, the
He's
character.
nowhere good near the actor though. His dad is. That's the problem.
No, and,
That's the problem. Yeah,
it wasn't there for me, and, like, honestly, when me and you'd watch these, there was days that went by, and I'm like, "Oh god,
yeah,
please just get me through this." Like, it was hard to
yeah.
watch, like, it got so
Very.
boring, so
Yeah,
draggy, and I'm just like, "I just need this to be over." Like, I didn't even wanna watch the show at that point because it
yeah.
just, like, had lost me.
And that I would say that was definitely the first half where it was like that. I think
Yeah,
it did start to get a little bit more interesting in the back half.
yeah,
And at one particular point that we'll talk about here in a minute.
yeah.
But then, yeah, like I said, that was kind of so the first half was kind of that setting that up.
Mhm.
Which, well, last thing I want to say about the early part of the Doomsday Killer, you're very good at predicting things with
Yeah.
TVs and movies. I'm not. I'm not good whatsoever. I predicted the twist of Professor Geller being dead
Yeah.
like almost instantaneously.
Instantly,
I
you're like,
mean,
"That
it
guy's not
was
there."
so obvious. Well, it was when he went to the diner and they went to go have breakfast or something, and he's talking to Travis Marshall, and there's a waiter right there, and the waiter is not giving any type of acknowledgement to him whatsoever. I'm
You're like,
like,
"That girl woulda
he's
offered him
not
a
there.
drink or something."
Or something, yeah, like there were, or at least like a look, like acknowledging that that guy is sitting right there. There was
Yeah.
nothing. It was literally nothing.
You're
So
like,
I knew from the beginning. I was like, yeah, this guy, he's dead. There's
yeah.
nothing here.
He's like,
Or
"He's
he's
definitely this."
yeah, he's like his dark passenger, Travis's dark
Yeah.
passenger, essentially. But then, like I said, that was going on, and then we had the whole brother Sam storyline. Which I liked, even though it wasn't like action filled or kill heavy or anything like that. I enjoyed it only because I felt like it put Dexter's character in a plot line where he was kind of questioning his own faith and what he believes
Mhm.
in after everything that's happened,
Yeah.
and what he thinks is real and what he believes in with all the doomsday killings.
Yeah.
So it kind of felt like he was just Brother Sam was kind of like a manifestation of like Dexter's own inner turmoil, which I really like that. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I know you weren't as high on Brother Sam as I was, but
I mean, like, I didn't mind him. Like, he was just there, I guess. I
yeah,
mean, he was really there because it was the one and like only time that Dexter was really kind of like getting to believe in God or like any sort of faith. Like, he always
yeah,
said, like, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in anything after this. This is just it. Like, we live,
yeah,
we die, it's done. And Brother Sam had changed that about Dexter, and Dexter was like starting to believe like maybe there is a God, maybe there's more to this. Like,
yeah,
I want to instill like maybe God into my son's life. And he wanted to send him to the Catholic preschool because he's like, maybe even if I don't believe in anything, I want him to believe in something good because that's what Rita would have wanted.
yeah,
And, so he had that relationship with Brother Sam, who was like a criminal turned to a good guy. Like, he changed his life. And he's like, well, look at this guy. He had a criminal history. He's murdered people, but like he's changed his life around. And like he
yeah,
puts his faith in like this God that I don't
yeah.
believe in. Maybe there is a higher power. And so I think that's why he latched on him. And Brother Sam knew who Dexter was. Like, he's like, I could see the evil. He saw the evil within
Well, I don't
Dexter.
think he knew that he was like a killer,
No, he
but
didn't know
he
that, but he saw
sensed
that he could
inner
sense that
turmoil.
he had
Yeah,
issues. And Dexter knew that, and he still wanted to be like, friends with Brother Sam. So I didn't mind the Brother Sam storyline. And then, it just gave morality. I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit, I know, but
yeah,
it's like when Brother Sam dies,
yeah,
spoiler alert,
yeah,
Dexter goes back to, I don't believe in God. There is no God.
yeah,
And what I've believed all along is right. Like, any faith that he did have from Brother Sam, he's just like, yeah, I don't need this Bible. It's not worth it. And I don't believe
yeah.
this stuff.
And that's kind of what made the storyline feel a little pointless.
Yeah.
Because I was like, well, yeah, you had him go on this journey, but then in all reality, as soon as Brother Sam died, he kind of just reverts back and says, "Hey, no, I was right,"
Yeah. They built it
So
up
that,
to destroy it back to nothing.
yeah, and that's kind of, again, that's kind of where like my problems with the writing are. It's like we do a lot of storylines setting up in these later seasons that kind of just don't go anywhere, or where they go is very disappointing. So yeah, I wasn't, a big fan of that. But that was basically like the first half of the season where that was back and forth. I think Brother Sam died in like the fourth or fifth episode. It was pretty quick.
Yeah, it was pretty quick.
Yeah, it didn't last the whole season.
No.
And then just to kind of switch topics on the season. Obviously, this is the season where Deborah becomes lieutenant, which kind of causes tension between her and Maria again. And this is kind of to me where they bring Maria's character back to being very unlikable and not somebody that you want to root for, because it seems like she's just kind of trying to sabotage Deb
Yeah.
every step of the way.
It's like I didn't
Which,
leave Florida, and then they like
yeah,
guilt her up. And I'm like, okay, I like her. Like, she's not bad. And then like this season, they're like, you know what?
yeah,
Fuck her character build. We're just
yeah,
gonna destroy it again. And I was like,
and
okay, I guess we
yeah,
don't like you again.
yeah, and where the character goes, right? It
Yeah.
kind of makes sense why they were doing this if they knew that's where it was heading.
Such a
But it
hater.
was, yeah, but it was like, it was still disappointing because you had set up for a couple seasons to get us to like her and to root for her and
Yeah.
to want her to be good.
You
So
made
I
us
didn't really
believe that
like
she
that.
stopped her hater ways just to turn around and be
Yeah,
like the biggest hater for like no
ever.
reason.
Yeah, and then obviously too, we didn't even mention it yet. Her and Batista just like abruptly got divorced.
Surprise,
Which,
surprise.
yeah, which I mean, most people probably saw that coming.
Yeah.
But it was just still like, it was just another storyline where I'm like, well, why
Mhm.
did we even waste time doing this? I feel like we could have just did something else, or something better that would have been more satisfying, because it just
And
really
to
wasn't.
piggyback off that, she was mad and salty and became a hateful bitch because she wanted Batista to
Batista,
become
yeah.
the lieutenant.
Well, she
And
wanted someone she could control and
yeah, she wanted
puppeteer.
somebody she could
Yeah,
control. And
yeah,
they were like, no, we're gonna put Deb in that
yeah,
position. And so that's why she became so like mad at everybody, was because she didn't get what she wanted, because it always
yeah,
has to be the Guerda's way.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I didn't like how they did that, obviously.
Yeah.
And then to kind of piggyback off of Deb becoming lieutenant, man, what they did to Joey Quinn this
You want
season
to talk about a murder
was,
of a character?
oh my God, like character assassination 101 is Joey Quinn in season 6 of Dexter. I mean, the man basically spends the entire 12 episodes just breaking
He's
down,
in a bender.
drinking, bendering all the time. He would have been fired multiple times from Miami
Yeah.
Metro if this was like a real life situation. Like this man was just out of control, just doing the most. Like nothing
Don't
about
you
the
love
way.
me?
Yeah,
Because
and
Deb,
like
mind you, people, we forgot to mention. So he proposes to Deb the
yeah,
day like finds out she's like lieutenant, and she's like, "No, I don't want to marry you. Like,
but
can we
yeah,
just like, be together? Like,
yeah,
we haven't even bought furniture together, and you think like I want to marry you?"
very yeah.
And he's like,
Which
"Well, we could buy a coffee
like I
table."
kind of saw them falling for each other and everything, but I didn't think at this point because Deb was always the person who was very quick to jump into marriages or long-term relationships or wanting to fall in love. I thought it was against Deb's character that was set up for 5.5 seasons that she would not want to do that with Joey.
I know
And
she
it
was like
didn't.
ready to jump on the boat with the ice truck killer. I was
Ice
engaged
Truck
to the
Killer,
ice truck
Lundy,
killer.
the one guy who was Quinn CI, I don't remember his name.
Yeah, I forget his name.
Him, it's like every other person that
She would
has
have
been
married
in this
in a
series,
heartbeat.
you want to
But then
marry
like
in two
Joey, who's
seconds.
you've been dating, you live with, you've been together for a while, and he like
Yeah.
proposes to you, trying to be like sweet, and she's like, "Ew, absolutely not."
Well, it wasn't that
Like,
she
don't
said
ask
no,
me
but it
that.
was like she hesitated, and it's like you didn't hesitate with anyone else, and if anything, you're a better match with Joey than you were with anyone else you were with. So
Yeah.
it's like that was again writing, and I know we're gonna beat that
Deb
drum,
was made for the
of course.
streets, man.
Yeah,
She wasn't
it's
meant
like
for marriage.
I mean, she could have been like, and that's what she wanted. But then all of a sudden, when it's the right person who's doing it, you're like, oh no, I can't do that. I can't have stability in my life. That's
No,
just
I gotta have
that's a no
total
go.
chaos.
Yeah,
Unless you're trying
yeah.
to
So
murder me or put me in like life or death situations, I'm not interested.
or if you're my brother,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that was just the assassination. I felt offended for Joey this season because of how bad his character was written. It just was not good. Okay, so kind of that's all the setup.
Yeah.
Obviously, too, we got the return of Brian this season, where
That was the most exciting freaking part
was
of the
it
whole
that was the
season.
season, right? Well, I forgot what was he out of town for, where it happened. I can't even remember.
I forget. He was out of town for something, then that became the dark passenger was Brian, and I was like,
Yeah.
Brian,
Oh
he's
yeah.
back.
Totally, like I said, when the first half, like I was like, "Wow, this is like the worst
I was
season."
like,
And then the
oh my
moment Brian
god.
came back,
But I was
I
like,
was just like, "Yeah, yes, let's go!" I was so happy when it happened.
dude, I would have been happy for anybody at that point. Like, I was just
Dude,
so
yeah.
bored with the beginning half of the show.
My
And it's
God.
basically like, honestly, we don't even have to get into it and like lag onto it that much. It's like the
Yeah.
Doomsday Killers. They're writing their little passages of like, who's
Yeah.
gonna, what's the next thing, and the revelations, and they're really boring shit that's not that exciting, to be honest with you.
So we'll kind of speed through that.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's revealed that Travis is fucking nuts and killed Giller. That's all fake and everything.
Is stuffed in a freezer in the basement of a church that he's been using.
Yeah. We talked about Quinn, spiraling and everything. Eventually Travis kidnaps Harrison towards the end once he figures out who Dexter is.
I'm saying.
And I was, oh my God, that was when I was like, all right, Dexter, you gotta fucking
dude, I was like,
how dare
Dexter's
you
gonna
kidnap
just
Harrison?
like murder anyone so brutally. Let it be this dude that just
Travis. Yeah.
I'm like, that child was in a lion costume minding his business, and you're gonna go kidnap him?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yep. So yeah, he ends up getting Harrison back though. Turning the tables on Travis. And we'll just kind of go to the end at this point because I don't really care to talk about this season all that much longer. He gets Travis on the table and he kills him, all while Deb is coming back to check up on Dexter for what reason I don't know. And finally we get the moment. What was it for? Oh, that's right. Oh my God.
That's the biggest thing.
I mean, it is the biggest thing, but what was the official reason? Like, why? Because I remember she said something after the fact. Like,
because Deb had been going to therapy. Deb was
going that I know. Yeah.
And she went there to go confess her love, that she was going to tell Dexter that she loved him. Not like, hey, bro, I love you, but like, hey, bro,
No, like,
I
hey,
love
I'm in
you.
love with you. Yeah,
I'm
which
in love
I
with
mean,
you. Like, I want
holy
to marry
shit.
you.
Talk about like not reading the room well when it comes to the writing of like what the fuck is wrong with you? What why are we doing incest? I mean, I know it's technically
It's
not
not. They're not
incest,
blood
but like
related, but it's just still like
it's
really
just so
fucking weird
weird.
because they've
Yeah,
been
it's like
together since
they
they were
grew
like babies.
and they grew up together as brother and sister. I mean,
No,
like
thank you.
it was so weird. So obviously we get a very shocking moment, where she figures
Deb's
it
just
out.
there about to confess her love and just sees her
Yeah,
brother just like brutally fucking
Merkin,
murder
yeah.
Travis Marshall.
Yeah. So we'll kind of just piggyback that off.
Yes.
Then we get into season 7, right? And it starts off. I just want to say before we start talking plot details,
Mhm.
this season is definitively my favorite of like the back 4 seasons.
Yes. Same.
I think there's a lot to like in this season. I think they do a lot of good things, even though I don't think it's as high up as those first 4 seasons that we got. This one in the back half definitely does the best job, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So we pick up right where we left off. Dex is, it's a great scene. I felt like where Dex is basically trying to talk his way out of it and makes up a bullshit story essentially about how this was his first time and he just snapped after the death of Rita, and she buys it. She does buy it for a minute,
Yes.
you know. But obviously with Deborah being as good of a detective as she is, she ends up realizing that he was lying and starts figuring out certain details. And it happens very quickly
Yeah.
that we get the scene where he comes home and essentially she has just everything laid out, all
She
the
just has the
knives,
slides,
everything.
everything. The
Yeah.
FBI, mind you, in like seasons previous, didn't like the FBI like raid this man's house and didn't find the slides, but let Deb. Is that it?
Did
Am I?
they? I don't know if they raided his house. I don't think
Well, they
so
like
because they were.
investigated his house or like so like somebody looked in his house before. I
That
can't
was
remember.
Dose. It was
Dokes.
Dose.
Dokes
Yeah.
didn't find it, but Deb's just like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm finding that shit.
Yeah. Which again, the writing of the
Dokes
later
was in like
seasons.
the military. I'm sure that dude would have found it
He should have
over
found it.
Deb,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Well, he found the
so,
slides, so like, why didn't he try to find anything else? That was kind of confusing.
yeah, she had
But
everything.
yeah, again, but it's the later seasons where it's like, man, Deb just really is able to figure anything out that she
The
wants.
story writing got very lazy and just like very
Yeah.
easy for everybody.
Very easy. Yeah. It was like very convenient. Things just happened because it needed to for the plot to progress. So I wasn't a fan of that. I did like though Deb finally knowing, because like I said, I felt like Deb should have found out much earlier in the show, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. So I like that scene where, she sits down, has all the knives out. They finally have the conversation where she asks him, like, hey, are you a serial killer? And he admits to it, and she obviously has a mental breakdown, finding out about everything. She admits, or Dexter admits, that Harry knew all along, and he essentially created the code for him.
Mm-hmm.
So Deb's life is just like her whole world is basically rocked at that point. Um, where she finds all this out, and it seems like she's going to turn him in at first.
Yeah.
Ultimately, she ends up not doing that. Um, because we wouldn't have a
She
season
helped
or a
cover up
plot.
Travis's murder. So at that point, it's like, oh, well, you're
You're
an
kind of
accessory to murder.
involved at that point, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I do believe though at certain points, like she definitely thought about even turning herself in, just
Mm-hmm.
for all the guilt and everything that happened with Dex.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a good, to me, a very intense dynamic to start the season off with having Dexter, or her knowing about Dexter and
Yeah.
her kind of struggling morally about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously while that's happening, we get the scene where Dexter kills the hitman for the Ukrainian mob after he had murdered a cop. We didn't even talk about the one cop. I can't even remember his name. Oh my god.
Oh my god, the guy from Chicago. Can't remember his
Yes,
name.
yeah. Who
Mike?
was like
Mike? Was
Mike?
that his name?
Yes, Mike. Yes, and he served no purpose in the story,
They're like, this is Mike.
literally
He's
whatsoever.
new. He is
Yeah,
working from us. He comes from Chicago.
yeah,
He
yeah,
wears suits and it's hot. Ha ha ha.
yeah, yeah.
And then
And
Mike just like
he got killed, and like
gets it.
I hated that when he got killed, and then Miami Metro was all like, "Oh my god, we lost our brother." I can't believe this. So Dex
And they go
obviously
on
goes,
about Mike, and I'm like, dude, we barely
yeah,
talked about Mike, but like you
we
guys are
barely
acting
knew
like
him.
Mike is like Angel or something.
Yeah, yeah. We barely knew who Mike was. It was ridiculous the way they played that up, because his character served literally no. His character was only brought in at the end of season 6, maybe because they thought, all right, we'll use him for something, and then he was just used to die, so that way there was a reason for Dex to kill this hitman, and for them to bring in, the villain of season 7.
Yes.
Um, so with that said, obviously we got that kill, and then
Yep.
now he's in the crosshairs of Isaac Serco, who I will say I have problems with all the villains in the back half of the season except for Isaac Serco. I feel like he is
Yeah.
easily the best villain in the back half of the
Yeah.
series, and I think he's one of the better villains of the series as a whole. Now we'll
Mm-hmm.
talk about how his story obviously played out. I wasn't the
Yeah.
hugest fan of it, but him as a villain, being played by Ray Stevenson, rest in peace, who has passed away. He was great. His dynamic and his chemistry that he had with Dexter was great. Their back and forths were intense every single time. He was the first villain to me that felt like he was a very physical threat to Dexter. Like I
Yeah.
don't think we really got that, even with Dokes probably was that too, but Dokes wasn't going to just kill the man in broad daylight, or anything like that. He wanted to
Yeah.
take him down through the law, but with Isaac, it was like, oh no, these guys get into a scuffle. Like I don't know, if Dexter's making it out, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you felt the same way about him as well.
No, I really liked him. And
Yeah,
especially when you get to like, the final shebang with him and you get more of his backstory and like you find
yeah,
out more of like his reasonings as to why he does the things he does. And it's like, it's really,
yeah,
sad because he has like,
yeah,
it's not one of these killers that has like, he's just doing it to do it. Like he has like
yeah,
reasoning behind that. It's like meaningful and it's
yeah,
powerful. So it's like, I definitely enjoyed him because like there was times it was like a love-hate relationship with him.
yeah,
He was funny to me, like in senses like he shouldn't have been funny, but it was
yeah.
like it was kind of like that comedic relief between him and Dexter at times.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
it was like they liked each other, but then they didn't like each
yeah,
other, and
yeah.
it was like a fun back and forth, which I liked.
It
It like
was. Yeah,
brought something there.
yeah, yeah. In that sense, like it was because of the fact I think that Dexter actually felt like he was a real threat.
Yeah,
There was like a weird respect there between them, even though
yeah,
like they wanted to kill each other, but like they had this like weird respect for one another.
yeah,
And then too, you got that scene which I loved, where Isaac is tailing him, and then he sets him up in that bar with all the other people who hate Isaac and want to kill Isaac.
yeah.
And like Isaac just fucking mauls all of them and kills them
I know
all.
I didn't
And
see
he's
that
like,
coming. Like what
yeah,
the
that was a
hell?
crazy scene. He's like, dude, what we're fucking trying to go after the
Fucking the
Terminator right now.
Terminator, my guy.
Yeah.
I was like,
So that just
damn.
that just established like how much of a physical threat Isaac was. Which
Yeah,
I thought was a good flavor to get, because we didn't really get that with
yeah.
previous villains. No
No.
one was really ever like a physical threat towards Dexter. It was more about like manipulating, but like no, Isaac will fucking kill you with his bare hands.
Yeah. And like one
At
thing
that
that I
point.
thought was funny too was like the scene where, after Dexter goes to like kill him in his own apartment and then he reports the dead body and then like Dexter has to go there like on work and
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
and, like them toying with one another. Like I
Yeah,
find that so
yeah, and he's
funny.
just sitting at the couch and he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, clean
Weird,
this up.
huh?
Yeah, huh? How did this happen? I
Very
wasn't home. I don't
suspicious.
know. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've
It
never
was a
seen this
cool like
man a day in my life.
yeah, yeah. It was a really cool cat and mouse type
Yeah.
situation that they had going on. And like I said, yeah, he was definitely one of the better villains, and I
Yeah.
really enjoyed him and his presence.
Hmm.
I will say I don't think his storyline lasted as long as it did.
Yeah.
Because we'll kind of segue into the other lingering plot line, that was going
Yes.
on this season. He didn't last as long as they did because of the fact that LaGuerta is it kind of happens in the beginning of the season after Travis Marshall is killed, where LaGuerta discovers the slide that he had created for Travis Marshall that had fallen down in the cracks and had broken once Deb caught Dex. So she kind of is putting two and two together that like, hey, the Bay Harbor Butcher is still alive. She never truly believed it was Dokes from the beginning. So I kind of
No.
figured that at some point it was probably going to be her who was going to be able to reopen the case and get it figured out. I saw that one coming, even though I knew it beforehand because I kind of got spoiled on it. So she starts looking that up. She brings in Matthews, which we kind of did go past it. She ended up screwing him over and getting him fired.
He took
So he
his
was
job.
basically and took his job. So he basically were forcing him into retirement. So she goes to him because she doesn't really want to get anyone else involved, and kind of makes a deal with him, like, hey, if you help me try to figure this out, if it's Dexter or not, I'll get you back your pension so you can retire with the money that you were supposed to. So that kind of, that's playing out too in the background while Dex is dealing with Isaac Serco. So when we get that, and she's pretty much on Dexter's tail, it kind of makes sense as to why last season they started kind of assassinating her character again and making her unlikable, because she's going to be the one to try to bring Dex down and figure everything out.
Yeah.
So those two storylines are kind of lingering in the background, and then we get to the other big storyline of this season that I really wanted to talk about, and that is Dexter discovering one Miss Hannah McKay, who he ends up figuring out because Hannah McKay's old boyfriend that she was involved with, when she was a teenager, who had gone on a bunch of killings, was basically playing Miami Metro and saying that he had other bodies that he had buried, and for them to take him out there just so he could get some sunshine and ice cream, basically, before he killed himself. And then Hannah McKay comes into the fold, and then Dexter essentially discovers that she was actually involved in those murders, and she has killed other people as well, in the time since then. And then, there was always some tension between those two from the beginning. I think you could say that. Dexter was like, it was like he was convincing himself in his head, like, oh, this is to kill her because she's, a murderer and does all this. But like, in all reality, you could tell that like he definitely had a thing for her. So, he obviously leads her on, gets her on the table, and then they have this crazy scene that I just did not see coming, where, he goes to kill her, but it ends up turning into them having sex, and,
it was wild. It was a wild ride. He took her to the place she wanted to go the most, and then they just like banged it out.
Yeah. Which I saw coming, but then I didn't think it was going to play out like that. I thought
I didn't think it would play out like that.
Yeah, and like too, the fact that she's like a poisoner and stuff, I'm like, well, he's not going to want to keep her alive at this point, because if he does this and then keeps her alive, like there's no trust there. Like she could kill him at any point in time.
Yeah.
But I'll just say it now, for me, if we end up doing another video where we maybe rank some of the things about the show, I just felt like Hannah McKay was his best love interest that he had throughout the entire show. And I know, a lot of people will still say Rita, just because of what she represented. I think she represented everything that was good with Dexter and represented him finally getting rid of the Dark Passenger. But when you come back to reality and you realize that, like, hey, that was never going to happen. That was never in the cards. He was never going to lose the Dark Passenger. Hannah McKay is the perfect one for him because she loved both sides of him. Right.
She was like, okay, so like I love Hannah McKay. Hannah McKay is like my favorite character probably of this entire franchise. Like, I love her. She's just so fucking smart and like clever. And, as a love interest to Dexter, it's like she accepts him as who he is and loves him. And like the thing is that like she is a killer herself, but not to the extent Dexter is, but like she understands like, hey, like he's got this issue, but she loves him still regardless. And like, this was the thing that got me, right? Is like Dexter never told Rita in the entire time of their relationship, like, I love you. Like, he never said, I love you, not one time. If you watch the season, people, he's never told Rita he loved her ever, even after she died.
He'd always say, loved her. Me too. That would always be his response. You would get so mad about that. You're like, why aren't you telling her that you love her? Why not?
And that made me so upset at the time, but it's like he truly didn't love her. But like when he met Hannah, like all the time, like he truly like said, like, I love her, like I would do anything for this woman, I would kill for her, I would die for her, like I love her. And there was just like the chemistry between the two was so good,
off the charts. It
was off the charts. And it's like I knew her first from Handmaid's Tale because I'd watched her as Serena Joy, the actress.
Correct. Yep.
And so it's just like such a like opposite character because she's like such a fucking bitch in Handmaid's Tale, and then like she's just like, I mean, she's still kind of bitchy, but like it's like a good bitchy. It's
weird because in Dexter, she is straight up a killer. Like,
Yeah.
no doubt about
Mhm.
it.
No.
She's not really that in Handmaid's Tale, but in Handmaid's Tale, she's a worse person.
Yeah,
Like, I know
she's an
that sounds
evil
weird, but
person because it's
yeah,
like she's a good person, and Dexter, like, yeah, she murders people, but, like, she
yeah,
does it for good reasoning, I guess, on her
yes. In her
in
mind,
her
yeah.
mind,
Yeah, it's
but, like,
kinda
she's
like
not an
Dexter, where
evil
it's like
person, like,
he
she
doesn't
still has,
look
like,
at it
good
like he's
about
doing
her.
wrong. Correct, yeah, it's all good
Where, like,
intentions.
Serena Joy is just a bitch, and,
No, she's just
we can get
terrible,
into
yeah.
that show, but,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
knew her
yeah.
from that first,
I did too,
and
yeah.
so to see her with this character, it was just like, she was chef's
She was
kiss.
great,
Love
yeah.
this character. She was so smart because, like you said, she was a poisoner. So, like, basically, she had found a way to murder people with plants. Like, she was a gardener and she gardened, had this beautiful garden stuff,
Yeah,
and she would find a way to poison people from this plant without it being detected in like autopsies or anything. And so,
yeah.
to me, I was like, that is so fucking smart. You
Smart.
never see, and it's always like they say, oh, women are always like ones to poison, like they don't like getting their hands dirty. But
Yeah,
she had found a way that was so clever to do, and I'm like,
yeah,
wow, we
yeah,
don't like talk about that. There's not women out here doing that like we know of,
yeah.
and I just thought
I
that
mean,
was really fun.
probably is, yeah. Yeah, there
It was
probably
like
is.
it's the opposite of Dexter. Yeah, she's a murderer, but she doesn't get her hands dirty and do that
Yeah,
blood that like
yeah,
Dexter does.
yeah. And yeah, it created such a great dynamic between them. Their
Hmm.
their chemistry was great, and just the character. Like I said, I very much criticize a lot of the writing of the show
Yeah,
in the back halves, but I felt like the writing was very good with bringing in Hannah McKay and
yeah,
establishing this relationship. Because it was the first time where, like I said, she loved both sides of him. She loved
yeah,
Dexter and she loved the Dark Passenger as well. So she
yeah,
was the first person where it was like, okay, I think we finally have someone who's going to accept Dexter as who he is and then can actually live a life with them after the
yeah.
fact.
Hmm.
And then obviously she got along with Harrison as well too, so it was pretty
Yeah,
much perfect. So obviously though, conflict starts because Deborah at this point has accepted Dex essentially, or maybe not accepted him, but like she's gonna
he's
not
learned to
turn
live with
him
it.
in. She's learned to live with it, and then Hannah comes into the picture, and that kind of just throws her into a whole disarray. You
She's
know,
in love with her brother, and she's like, "How dare he love anyone but me? Like,
yeah. I
I
mean,
met him. Who does he think he is?"
and then we just get that scene on the porch after, basically she figures out that
She's
he's
like,
sleeping
"I
with Hannah
want you. How
and
can you
is
sleep
like,
with her?" And he's like, "Yo, don't love you like that. Love you as a sis,
and
like, but I'm not
it's the
interested."
funniest thing in the world because I really feel like the actor, like Michael C. Hall, in his
Uh-huh.
reaction in the scene when she says that to him is just
Mm,
like all
like
of
what
us,
we're
like
all
the
thinking.
entire audience is just like,
Oh.
what? Like,
Yeah,
because it just didn't make sense. Like, you could have did everything that you did with the character of Dex and Deb
yeah,
the same exact way, and it wouldn't have made a difference having that in the storyline.
yeah. They
It
just
just,
wanted to do it
it
for
was
no
so
reason.
bad, and
My
I'm
thing is
glad.
that
No, go ahead.
no, my thing is that Deb tried to act like, oh, I don't like Hannah McKay. She didn't because not because she was in love with Dex, but because she's a murderer, Dexter, and she's a murderer. Just that she's gonna enable your bad behavior, but it's
So,
really because she was in love with Dexter. I don't think it had anything to do with the
yeah,
fact that Hannah McKay was a
well,
murderer.
and I think too, she felt like because of the style of killer that Hannah was with being a poisoner,
Hmm.
she felt like Dex was never going to be safe. She felt like if there was at any point in time that they had a disagreement, that she could just poison his food and he would just croak, and that'd be the end of it,
Yeah,
right? But I tend to hope, right, and don't know how much faith I have in those back half writers. I tend to hope that they just realize that, like, hey, nobody fucking likes this whole weird "I'm in love with my brother" storyline. So when we go into season 8, let's just forget about that. And they did. So I'm like, all
they
right, at
did.
least they
Thank
read the
God.
room. They read the room and they said, all right, we're done. We're done.
Yeah,
Okay, so let's kind of wrap up the main storylines. Like I said, we got the 3 storylines going here. Isaac Serco, they end up kind of teaming up in a way. I don't remember specific details as to why him and Dexter ended up actually like becoming friends again. I think it was like there was bigger bosses from Ukraine who were coming to
yeah.
try
They
and
were
find
coming to
Isaac.
kill. Yeah,
Yeah, so he basically Isaac, in a desperate attempt after wanting to kill Dexter all this time, he's like, "Hey, help me do this, and then I'll let you live,
I'll
and
leave
we'll
you
we'll be
alone.
done." Yeah, and so they end up setting the trap, and then we get that awesome bar scene. I know we didn't get to mention that
Yeah,
awesome bar scene where Isaac basically explains everything of
Mhm.
who the guy that Dexter killed at the beginning of the season was and what he meant to him. And they have a drink together and they basically just relate on like a human level.
Yeah.
And again, it's like villains in this show that are awesome. They kill way too early, and I hate that
Yeah.
about this show. That's like the one major criticism over all 8 seasons
Mhm.
that I have is like you get these awesome villains, and then you just get them out of there very quickly. And I'm like, I really wish they
They
wouldn't have
didn't
done
do that.
that. And with a lot of them, like Trinity, Dokes, all of them, it's like,
Mhm.
why do we keep getting rid of these villains so quickly?
Yeah.
So we get the scene where they set the trap at the boat. Isaac ends up dying or getting shot. He doesn't die right away, but they kill the people that are coming after him. And
Yeah.
then Dex takes him out on the boat, on the water so he could die peacefully and, ends
Mhm.
up throwing him overboard. Basically,
Yeah.
we just did that so that way we could clear way for the ending of the show with the LaGuerta storyline
Yeah.
coming to a head. I forgot, but when it comes to Hannah, did she try to kill Deb? Was that it? Am I
What had
misremembering
happened
that?
was I'll give you the little breakdown. So in the meantime, there was a reporter who's investigating Kenna McKay and wanting to write a book about her life
That's
because
right.
he
Yeah.
knows he has a suspicion that she's guilty of doing all these murders and
Yeah.
everything leads up. Everyone around Hannah's dying and this and that. So he actually ends up falling for Deb and wants to go on dates with Deb and everything. And so
Yeah.
Deb and this reporter are kind of going out and everything. And the reporter's telling Deb, like, hey, Hannah's up to no good. Like, I have proof that she's probably killed all these people. Dex
Yeah.
finds out about it and he's like, yeah, no, that's not good. You're not getting my girl, man.
You're right. Yeah.
So he tells Hannah's like, you know what? I'm gonna let him do this interview. That's fine, perfect. So she does the interview with this reporter that's onto her and knows all this tea and everything. And he goes over there and he does the interview. And he always had this bad habit of chewing pens, and like Deb was like,
That's
ew,
right. Yeah.
that's gross. And so he was chewing his pens, doing his thing, and he left. He goes to Dexter's apartment to get his side of the story and do a report. He drops dead in Dexter's living room, and they don't know what it is. Here, Hannah like poisoned the pen that he put in his mouth and was chewing, so like he got the dosage and like died of a heart attack because that's what the medicine, like the plant did. And so Deb was like, "No, Hannah, she poisoned them. She poisoned my boyfriend reporter." And so, Hannah didn't like that. And she was like, this bitch is too much onto me. And so basically she um sorry. So Hannah goes to Deb's house.
You're good.
Oh, yeah, you're good now. Okay. So Deb's like, you killed my boyfriend. And Hannah didn't like it. So Hannah sneaks into Deb's apartment and like poisons her water bottle and everything. And Deb ends up getting into a car crash because of this.
That's right.
And Deb was
Yeah.
like, it was Hannah. It was Hannah. And Dexter's like, it wasn't Hannah. But he finds like a blonde hair and he's like, well, maybe I'm just a Lulu. Maybe it fell off of me. I don't know. But it comes out that Hannah did, in fact, try to like poison Deb and off her because she's
Poison
like,
Deb. Yeah.
becoming too much of a fucking issue in my life. And I don't like this. You're getting in between
Yeah.
me and Dex. And Dexter was like, hold up. You're not going to like, threaten to murder my sister. Like, we got to come to a compromise here. And
Yeah.
Hannah was like, no, she's kind of got to go. So in that moment, Dexter had to choose between the woman that like he truly loved or the sister that
Or
he's
Deborah.
like,
Yeah.
or Deb, who he loves, and in a different way. And in that moment, he chose to use the evidence of the poisoned pen from the reporter to incriminate Hannah in the death and the murder of the reporter. So she gets arrested for killing the reporter.
Okay, that's right. You're right. I heard most of what you said. I did break up a little bit. So yeah. So no, it's not your fault. I think I'm just having issues with my computer here. But yeah, so yeah, you're right. That was essentially how Hannah ended up in jail, and they kind of took Hannah off the board, like I said, with those 3 storylines. So at this point, Hannah's in jail. Circo's dead. That whole storyline's wrapped up, and then all we're left with is LaGuerta. She basically figures out, I don't remember specifically how, she figures out that Dex was the Bay Harbor Butcher and he set up Dokes. And essentially, Dexter sets a trap for LaGuerta with, what's his name? Hector Estrada, the guy who killed his mom.
Yes.
And so he sets up a trap to where he makes it seem like he killed Hector Estrada when he really didn't. And this is really all just an attempt to discredit LaGuerta, right? And to get
Mhm.
no one to really believe LaGuerta about her, her discovering who Dex really is. And I just
Yeah.
loved that whole sequence because they didn't let you know that beforehand.
No.
You thought that like, oh, LaGuerta's like actually got him. Like we didn't really see
Yeah, I
how it
was
played
stressing
out.
there. I was like, damn,
Yeah,
girl,
I'm
you
like,
find
damn.
him.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into season 8 in a minute, but this is kind of the moment of the season where I'm like, this really feels like we're wrapping up like
Yeah.
this whole entire series. And obviously, I felt like that we should have done it
Yeah.
at that point. Even though we didn't, we'll get into that in a minute. I have a lot to say about that. But that whole sequence in the Miami Metro where she brings him in and arrests him, argues with Batista, argues with Deb, and says, "No, I'm doing this. You have to let me do this." And then all the evidence comes out and basically shows that Dex is just playing 4D chess.
Hmm.
And nobody's going to get him. No one's going to outsmart him at this point.
Yeah.
So that goes and sets up the finale where LaGuerta figures out that Hector Estrada is alive. Or no, Dexter does. I'm sorry. Dexter knows that Hector Estrada is alive and essentially wants to kill him and then use him as bait to kill LaGuerta.
Yeah.
And Deb ends up figuring this out and ends up getting to the shipping container location. And we get the scene essentially where Deb walks in, LaGuerta's there, passed out. Dex is ready to do the plan and kill her, frame it on Hector Estrada, so then everyone's clear of the situation. And this is my biggest fault with this season is how this season wrapped up. With Deb being the ones who pull the trigger and kill LaGuerta, basically choosing her brother over the situation. I just didn't think that needed to be done. I don't think she needed to
No.
pull the trigger herself. You could have
Mhm.
had the same exact situation play out and instead just have Deb put the gun down, walk out of the crate, and let Dex finish the job. That would have had
Yeah.
the same exact impact without her actually pulling the trigger. Because then
Yeah.
it's her accepting Dex and basically being
Yeah.
in on it with him now. So yeah, so that's how I felt about it. And then we can kind of go into season 8. But like for you, how did the finale make you feel in that final moment, essentially, in this
Yeah.
what otherwise was a really really good season?
I mean, like I told you when we were watching it live, I'm like, why did she come? Like, you knew what was
Yeah,
going on.
yeah,
You know what he does. Just stay out of it. Like, why do you have
yeah,
to butt your head in? Like, she has to always get in the middle of everything, which drives me
yeah,
crazy about Deb. Is just like sometimes she's too much for me, and I'm like,
yeah,
girl, go away. Leave
yeah.
it alone. Like you did not have the blood. Like she feels like, oh, if I just let him do it, I'm gonna have blood on my hands. But like you literally have blood on your hands
You
because you
will
murdered her.
literally physically get blood on your hands after the
If you would
fact.
have just minded your business and
Yeah,
pretended like to, be ignorant of the
yeah.
situation, you could have just stayed at that party at Batista's bar, chilled, relaxed, had a good time, and Dexter could have been like, yeah, it's taken care of. You knew it had to be
Yeah.
done. There was no way around this. Like, why did she act like it's okay? We can maybe make this work. Like, it was never going to work. Okay.
LaGuerta
Either
was
your
never going
brother's
to stop
going to prison.
until,
Yeah.
yeah, yep, it was never going to end until Dexter was in prison or she was dead. Those were the only two
So
outcomes
the
that
fact
we
that
were going
Deb
to get with
acted
that
like there was like
storyline.
multitude of outcomes, like that
Yeah,
just drove me crazy. And then
yeah.
it's just like, she kills LaGuerta. They go back to the party seemingly like nothing is wrong. Like she has no like trauma from doing this at the moment, right? Like they just go back to the party, like the New Year's party. They're vibing, whatever to make it look
Well,
like,
I
hey,
don't
we
think
can
they
move
showed
on.
that.
They showed
I
them
don't think
walking back to the party.
did they?
Yeah, they did at the very end. They showed them walking back to the party, probably to build that alibi, like, hey, we
I
were here
thought
at the
that was
party.
I thought that was in season 8 because I thought the closing shot was her crying in Dex's arms after doing that or holding LaGuerta. I'm sorry, wasn't that the final shot of the season?
No, they went back.
No.
They cleaned up and they went back to the party afterward.
Okay.
And
Okay. Yeah, you might be right. I can't really remember.
it's like it was like seemingly like nothing, and that was just basically how the show ended. And I was like, well, damn.
Yeah.
At least I don't got to deal with LaGuerta being a bitch anymore. But like, damn,
Yeah.
I kind of feel
Yeah.
bad for her. But
Yeah. Yeah, so, obviously, like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed season 7. I felt like it was the best
yeah,
of the back halves. Um let's get into the
the worst of the
final
worst.
the final conversation of this video and final season that we're covering. And I'll just say it right off rip. Anyone who's watched the show knows this is the worst season.
This
I mean,
season sucked so bad.
Yeah, and it's weird because I would say this is my worst season. Season 6 is my second worst. The reasoning though for why I hate this season more is because it wasn't boring or disinteresting like the other season was, barring one particular storyline that we're about to get into.
Yeah.
But it was just so all over the place. There was no focus. Nothing made sense. I mean, you throw the writing right out of the window in this season.
No,
Nothing
there's no
made
writing.
sense.
What is that?
So let's start to get into the details of why we don't like this season. Right off rip, the handling of Deb's character in this storyline was just so out of left field. All of a sudden, it's a 6-month time jump. Obviously, LaGuardia's dead. Miami Metro is honoring her. And Deb has quit Miami Metro, which as a character, like for 7 seasons, you're not going to make me believe that she would quit just after that. That was her life, and everything in her life revolved around being a detective or being a lieutenant, whatever she was. So she quits. She becomes a PI, and is just basically off saying, I hate you, Dexter. I want nothing to do with you. I can't believe you made me sacrifice and compromise myself so much to the point I killed LaGuardia, and is a drug addict and with dangerous people.
Yeah.
And, Dexter's just continuing life as it is without her. But the writing, like, we talked about character assassination with Joey. I mean, just the way that this season starts, I was like, I hate this.
Killed Deb.
It didn't feel real.
Character assassination. Yeah, it felt like we were in a weird daydream.
I was like, this felt like a fever dream that we were doing, because I'm like,
that like with Deb's character, like she was always like so clean cut. Like I have to do everything right, everything by the books, everything. So like, you know what I mean? And I grant you, like, with the prequel, they give you a little bit more context as like the Deb.
I was gonna bring up Original Sin,
but it's like with Original Sin, like okay, like maybe this season makes a little bit more sense because you're getting like if you had a context of younger Deb, but you don't have that context.
But that's what I'm saying. I don't like that. That feels like to me that they're trying to apologize for season 8 in Original Sin by making it seem like, oh, well, she always kind of had this party side to her where she slipped off and did stuff that she wasn't supposed to do, I just, and then just her hating him when it's like, again, me and you just talked about it. She didn't even need to go there. There was no reason for her to do that. That was all her decision at that point.
I felt like the first half of the show was, Deb, please forgive me. Deb, can't we just go back to living our lives as normal?
Yeah.
Deb, come on, please come home. And Deb just being like, I can't do this. I can't live with myself.
Yeah, afterward. Like, okay, and then hating his guts. When it's like, that was the whole dilemma. If you were gonna pick to not be around Dexter, it was that moment in season 7 when you're in the crate and you have to choose between LaGuardia and him.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, and he even said it, shoot me. That's what he told her. He was like, pick me. End all this. Pick me. Kill me. End it. Live on with your life. Which is, if that's where we were going with this, then that's what she should have did. But we have to have another season because, Dexter makes Showtime millions of dollars, and we couldn't end it with season 7. So, okay, that's fine. God, I hate season 8 so much.
I know, it's really
hate it. It's so bad.
But then, you go through like half the season of them being like, "Oh, I can't stand you," and him like begging for her forgiveness, and then all of a sudden,
I think I know where you're going, and let's hold off on that for a minute because I want to bring up the other storyline of this season.
I forgot what the other
absolutely fucking despise. And I hate, and is the worst storyline and worst thing that was ever introduced in Dexter. And that is the introduction of Dr. fucking Vogel.
Evelyn Vogel.
I hate when shows in their last season, or last couple seasons, same point, in the very end of the show, introduce a situation that completely erases everything that you knew for 7 seasons.
Yep.
And Dr. Vogel's character is basically a representation of that, because we find out that not only did Harry not create the code, this random woman that we've never met before and never cared about is the one who created the code. And Harry was just a depressed buffoon who couldn't handle the fact that Dexter was a killer.
Yeah.
What the fuck are we doing here? I mean, my God, like that was the part of this season that I'm like, and we spent like seven episodes with her, and it was a primary focus. And
Miserable.
it was miserable. And Deborah eventually comes into, we didn't get to the part of why she starts seeing Dr. Vogel, but Dexter, like right off rip, I'm not even kidding, halfway through the second episode that she's introduced, he's acting as if this is his mother. I mean, I'm like, oh my God, this writing is so terrible. Like when any show ever retcons anything like that late in the game, I just get so frustrated.
Yeah.
And then to do it with such an uncharismatic character that I don't care about. Like at least if it was it's like at least if there was someone who, was a good actor or was funny or brought a good vibe to the show, it would be worth it. But then you got Dr. Vogel, who is, I might as well grab this piece of paper over here and run it under a sink. And that's about the charisma that Vogel has. So sorry for that long-winded rant. If you want to give your thoughts on Vogel and how you felt, you can go ahead.
No, I mean, like, I agree. Vogel was just so, like, when she came into the picture, Alan, I kid you not, I thought this was like a fever dream. Like, I thought this was like some weird Dexter that was like, he was
like fan fiction.
Yes, like fan fiction.
Yeah.
It felt like a really bad fan fiction.
Yeah,
and I'm like, what the hell are we going on about? Like, she's just so British and boring and, I am a psychiatrist and, I study the mind of sociopaths. And then what kills me is this bitch. She sits there and she's like, Dexter, you're a sociopath. You're not sociopath. You're a psychopath. You have no empathy. You have no feelings. But then it's like, he clearly loves Hannah. He clearly loves his kid. He has fucking feelings. What are you talking about? Like, if he was a true psychopath, he would be like,
well, again,
he would have no emotion ever.
Yeah.
And he does. Well, and she's like, oh, well, I don't know how you have these feelings.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Know. It's like she shows up and then all of a sudden it's like she knows everything.
Yeah.
And Dex just agrees with that, even though he knows that, like, that's not what he's become. That's not how his journey has been. Yeah. And that's what I mean when I say it's like you bring in this character who just kind of unravels everything that we've learned. And it's like, why are we doing this? There's a storyline right there with Deb and Dex. And this whole season should have either been about them coming to a head and confronting each other, and it being basically a season of Dex versus Deb, or about them coming together and reuniting for the final season.
Yeah.
It was all right there. Yeah. And instead, we're dealing with this British doctor who no one cares about. And then not even just that. We'll kind of add more to it. We get the brain surgeon killer who, oh my God, one of the
brain that it has something to do with psycho. I don't even know. I kind of like zoned
out. Well, we find out, obviously later on in the season that the brain surgeon killer, which has been coined Psycho Ryan Gosling, which I kind of thought was pretty funny by the internet, because it's pretty accurate. I mean, the guy does kind of look like Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
We end up finding out that essentially he is Evelyn's estranged child, which that even alone, I was like, what? How does this even make sense?
Because she's like, I had two sons. The one was murdered. The one murdered the little one, and I put the other one in a psychiatric hospital back in Britain, and it burnt down, and he died. There's no way it's my son, but just kidding. He was the one who set the fire, and like he got out, and now he's living in Miami, and he is, just scooping brain out, I guess.
And
sending her in jars because.
The whole thing made absolutely no sense. There was nothing intelligent or creative about the writing.
It's basically the storyline. Just to sum it up, because I'm getting triggered even talking about this because it was so stupid. It was just that they needed a storyline, and Dexter was like, you know what, Mommy Evelyn, Dr. Vogel, I will do anything for you. I'm gonna find this brain surgeon who keeps harassing you, and I'm going to figure it out. So then he goes on the vengeance of trying to figure out the brain surgeon so he could save his mommy, Evelyn. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you want to pick up from there.
Yeah. So that's a whole. I'm going to kind of go back. I know that is a part of it, and we'll get into that. But I wanted to, because there's something more important that happens, and that makes even less sense. Is you have this whole self destruction route that Deborah's on, and then we get that scene where they're driving in the car. She realizes everything about she realizes that she thinks she found out about Harry committing suicide basically because of Dex. And then we get that scene where she drives Dex in the car, drives him off into the lake to kill him.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden
We're
has a
fine.
change of heart and we're fine. And everything just goes back to normal. And we just forget everything that happened.
She's like, I wanted to kill you, but then I decided yes, it was happening. That wasn't a good idea. So then
Oh my God.
now I love you again, we're besties. It was just very strange.
What are we doing here? Like you set up half of a season where she hates him and wants to kill him, and all of a sudden it's just back to normal. And she starts seeing Evelyn, and that's when like it becomes a whole weird family
It
thing.
becomes a family thing.
Yeah.
She becomes her like mother and takes them under their wing. And Hannah's just like, this bitch is kind of weird, but all right, nice to meet you.
Yeah. Now I will say, the character that stemmed from that I actually did like. What was the boy's name? I can't remember his name. Remember the young boy that Dex kind of took under his wing? I can't remember his name.
Yeah. I know
he in this season, his relationship with Dex was actually one of the cooler things. I actually did enjoy that. Because it kind of was a preview, right, of where we go in New Blood, which we'll probably talk about another day. So that was cool.
I was trying to find this guy's name.
Yeah, I can't remember his damn name, but yeah, that was a cool like aspect of this season that I actually thought did work, even though it was very short. And I mean, he showed up, he started learning from Dex, and then eventually the brain surgeon got him when he figured out who he was. So there was that. Yeah. If you can't find it, it's okay. It's
okay.
People probably, anyone who will probably figure it out. It's fine.
But yeah, he was cool. He like at first you're like, I don't know about him, but then like you actually end up really liking him. I'm like, all right.
Yeah. Once you get those kind of like weird like mentor mentee scenes with him and Dexter, it was pretty funny. It was like more comedic than anything. And then obviously we get the return of Hannah, which another portion of the season that I actually did find to be good and enjoyable.
Hannah escapes prison.
That actually happened at the end of season 7, which we kind of brushed past that because there was a lot.
She pretended she was like having a seizure. They took her to the hospital. She broke out of the hospital. Now she's on the run.
She got out.
They don't know where Hannah's at. Hannah's gone.
Yeah, so she was on the run. She ends up getting married to some like rich and powerful guy. And then she comes back.
Changes her identity.
Yeah, she comes back to Miami. Ends up rekindling with Dexter. Still is in love with him. They rekindle, and then there becomes a plan, that they're gonna leave Miami for good, go to Argentina, him, Hannah, Harrison, and basically just live happily ever after. So at first, then we get the scene where Oliver Saxon ends up killing Vogel, which, I don't know if you remember when we watched that episode, I quite literally cheered when it happened. Like I yelped yes. Like I was like, yes, when it finally happened, because I was just so happy to be finally
honestly
rid
the
of
two
Vogel.
most satisfying deaths in history is maybe her and Joffrey from Game of Thrones.
I mean, honestly, I won't go that far, but it's bad. It was like, I was very satisfied when she was dead. But then, of course, it's like, well, now Dexter needs to get revenge on Oliver Saxon before he leaves. And it's like, no, dude, just leave.
Who cares? Let her be.
Just get out. Yeah.
Yeah. Go be with Hannah and your baby.
Yeah. So he, I don't remember how specifically, because I just really didn't care about that season. He ends up, setting his sights on Oliver. He wants to kill him. And then he gets to a point where he gets him tied up. I think in one of his hideout, the brain surgeon's hideouts. I don't even remember his name because he was so bad. He ends up getting him there, and he goes to kill him essentially, and then just for some moral good reason, don't know why, he decides he has a change of heart, and he decides not to kill him, which obviously ends up turning out to be a very huge mistake, and he's going to let Deb arrest him because he wants to do the right thing. And, during the arrest, he gets out. I don't remember how he got out. I don't really care, truthfully. And then he ends up shooting Deb, leaving her, pretty much critically wounded. And then we kind of play this back and forth game for like an episode and a half on the condition of Deb. And,
Yeah.
they embrace each other. Like they're finally good. Everything's going to be okay. She still loves him. He still loves her. And then, she's basically declared brain dead from an aneurysm.
Yeah.
Essentially, it doesn't actually happen, but she gets killed off screen. That's pretty much what happens. I mean, it doesn't technically happen that way,
Yeah.
but that's how they played it out, which, is to me the most unsatisfying way that you could have ended her storyline. Because regardless of how you feel as a character, for Deb, like it should have been much more satisfying than that if she was going to die.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that was just not great. So he ends up pulling the plug on her. There's obviously the hurricane going on and everything. He pulls the plug on her. She dies, and then we can kind of, unless you got any thoughts, we can kind of go into the final stretch of the ending. Yeah. So he takes her body, out on the boat during the hurricane because he wants to dispose of her the only way he knows how, essentially, and put her in the water. And that to me actually was a good scene, an emotional scene, and a powerful scene.
Yeah.
I did really enjoy that. I thought, it worked very well. But again, the sourness of Deb dying off screen essentially like that didn't really work for me.
Yeah.
But at least that scene, the emotional send off of her character with Dex was done pretty well.
Yeah.
And then, Dexter drives off straight into the hurricane, leaving behind Harrison and Hannah. And then Harrison and Hannah go to Argentina and go off, basically abandoning his son. And it makes it seem like he died. And then at the very end, it is revealed that he lived, and essentially is a lumberjack, and is just living in isolation. Because he probably rightly feels that he kills the people around him just by being who he is.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to do that to Hannah and to Harrison. And everything in the way that all ended, I completely understand why they wanted to do New Blood and why they wanted to try to redo this ending over again. Because for me, a lot of this stuff was good concepts, but it just failed in execution so bad. And that's why I hate this season, pretty much with a passion. And I don't say that lightly because, like, pretty much besides 8 and 6, like I enjoy every season of Dexter. But this one especially, and like the gap between 8 and 6 is like pretty significant to me.
Yeah.
There was just not a lot I liked about that ending, and if I had been watching it live, I would have been so mad. I would have been like, this is terrible.
It's not even like one of those endings where it's like, people get pissed about how The Sopranos ended, right?
Yeah.
And it's like me and you have always said, like, we love the way
we like that ending. Yeah.
We like the ending. We're in the minority of people. Like, most people are like,
we like the ambiguity about it. Yeah.
But that one was like more for interpretation. Like, you could take it as you will.
That was at least bold too.
It was
like,
bold.
They at least tried to do something unique,
But it was like with this, it was just like this whole season was a botch. It was butchered. It was just some bullshit put together by the network because they wanted money because of the Dexter name. Like, it should have ended, like you said, in season 7, but they dragged it out another season. They had no storyline. They had no plot. Either they needed new writers, new something, because it was shit. It's really what it was. It was shit. And I don't think it was the actors' fault. I think that they worked with what they had. They did. It was mainly the showrunners and the storyline that they came up with.
And even to piggyback off that, I actually think that Jennifer Carpenter, who played Deb, I thought that was her best season, acting wise. Like, I think she had the best season in season 8, acting ability wise. But the writing, there was too much going on. None of it made sense. It was, like I said, it was right there. Just do Dex versus Deb as the final season. That is the natural way to end this show. And they did.
Yeah.
And what they instead opted to do was way worse. None of it was better. None of it was satisfying. So, I understand why, 9-10 years later, they wanted to come in with New Blood and they wanted to revive it and try to fix the ending.
Yeah.
I don't think they did, but
Yeah.
we'll get into that'll
I
be
mean, we
another
can do
video. We've
that's
been
another
going,
podcast. We'll get into
yeah,
new
we've been going too long here already as it is. So,
Yeah.
We're gonna end it on the disappointing
But yeah,
note of
I mean,
season 8.
all in all, like Dexter, like my final like thoughts on Dexter as like a season and like
Mhm.
not just like a season, but like a
Or
series.
series, yeah.
Is like I really enjoyed it. I thought I knew what Dexter was as like just a casual person. Like I heard about
No.
it for years. Like I thought Dexter was a cop who just like murdered bad people. Like no, this is like genuinely what I thought. Like this is
Yeah.
my
I
knowledge
mean, he
of
kind of
Dexter.
was.
I
Yeah, I
just
mean,
thought,
kind of
oh, it's a
was,
cop who like is actually like a vigilante and he like killed. This is what I thought. Like
Yeah.
he just kills bad guys, and it's totally
Yeah.
not what it is. And
No.
I just thought, okay, it's just like one of those older shows. It's overrated. It's probably like
No.
cheesy, but I genuinely ended up liking it a lot. And like I
Yeah.
found myself, especially in like my older age, like not that I'm like super old, but
Yeah.
I enjoy these older shows that may have come
Yep.
out when me and you were younger, or like even when me and you were like babies.
Yeah.
Practically, and it's like the older shows have so much more to give
Yeah.
and better storyline and everything. Like I enjoy them more than
Yeah.
like these newer shows that are put out. You get less episodes, there's less put into it, and all in all, like I really like this. Like I would recommend Dexter to somebody. Like if you don't want to like watch season 8, I mean, like you don't got to, yes, but like you really have to.
I hate to say it, but if you're gonna watch Dexter and then
You
get
might as well
into
just
New Blood, Original Sin, you pretty much have to. Like, there's
You
no
have
way
to.
around it.
Unless you want to
and now,
IMDb, like read the spoilers.
yeah, which I mean, shit, that might be better, truthfully, than what you got with season 8. But, we stuck it out, and
Yeah.
like I said, so for me, like, kind of piggyback off what you said, overall thoughts on the show. Out of the 8 seasons, there's really only 2 seasons I didn't like.
2 that are bad.
And that's not bad. That's not a bad track record. And spoiler, I liked New Blood, even though I have issues with it. We'll talk about that another time. I liked New Blood, and we're only halfway through Original Sin, but I'm enjoying Original Sin so far.
I am too.
Dexter is a show that has more hits than misses. I'll say that. If it's a show,
there's
that
no
you
perfect
end up liking,
show.
Yeah, there isn't. No. Well, Breaking Bad, but
besides Breaking Bad, but besides that,
but,
I don't know of any other show that didn't have like one season where you're like, oh god, this kind of fucking sucks. But like, I'm gonna pull through.
But overall, I think there's more good than bad. Even though we just ranted about season 8 for 25-30 minutes, but to me, there's more good in the show and bad. Excuse me, sorry. And then Michael C. Hall too he's one of the greatest protagonists that we've ever gotten in a show. His performance as Dexter, like, there's no one else. I like the young guy who's playing him in Original Sin, but like Michael C. Hall is the standard, and I don't think there's anyone who's ever going to top that performance.
Like, honestly, like, I don't think you can convince me that like he's not Dexter. Like, I mean, I know he's not murdering people, but like personality wise, like I feel like it'd just be like so hard to like meet him, and then like he's just like, "Hi guys," like,
and to separate that,
separate,
yeah,
that's how good of an actor
he's
he
so
is.
good.
Is that he's so good with this character? Like he's built this, and there's no character like Dexter. And he's referenced in so many other shows and stuff. Like they bring up Dexter, and even with
the influence.
The influence he has.
The influence is insane.
Like he is the standard of like an original character. And like he's not some stupid spin-off of somebody else. Like he's his own, and Michael C. Hall is the reason for that. Like he did such a phenomenal job. And even I don't know Deb's name in real life.
Jennifer Carpenter.
Yeah, she's a great actress as well.
Yeah,
I mean, like a lot of the people on this show, they're really good actors and
good.
actresses. Yeah. Like they bring a lot to the table, and I think that they're good. And the thing is that I liked a lot of them. And this show is like I didn't see them in other things. They're not like these big, over the top actors and actresses that are in everything. And like sometimes I feel like shows are better when they have no name people to like to meet. Like where they're not hiring the Jennifer Anistons to do the show. Like they bring more to it. And I like the whole everyone's, vibe was good in the whole series, and
the bigger actors aren't always better. That's just
they're not.
It is. They're not always going to make a better series. Sometimes I think it's better to have lesser known people, who pretty much embody themselves in these characters in that way. So I agree. I mean, this is definitely one of my favorite shows of all time. I love talking about it. Obviously, I mean, geez, we're 20 minutes past even the last time. Yeah. No, you're good. It was a little bit more negative, so I think it
Had
mustered a little
more to
bit
talk
more
about.
emotions in this one.
Yeah,
So yeah. But yeah, so that's
definitely
our final
recommend.
thoughts. Definitely recommend 100%. We love
Um,
Dexter.
I know that me and Alan were talking about we're probably going to be doing another live stream to
Yeah.
talk about Resurrection. Is that what it?
So Resurrection is going to be the new one that's going to
We're
start in
gonna
July.
yes, we're gonna do
We're
one
going to
when that
probably
comes out.
yeah, we'll probably start doing I was maybe thinking about doing weekly or maybe not. I don't know. We're still kind of ironing out the
We got to
details on
figure out
that.
that.
I
But
did want to do we were going to do one last one that is going to be based pretty much around New Blood and Original Sin.
yes,
And then have
okay,
like some rankings in there where we maybe rank
yeah,
the seasons, rank the villains, rank the love interest, stuff like
yeah,
that. So stay tuned for that.
yeah.
Anything else you want to add in, Caitlin?
No, just like, subscribe, follow Alan on all his social media, and he can, put it out there when we post.
Yes.
We're still working on watching Original Sin,
Yeah.
so just bear with us
Which
and give us time for that.
Yeah, we
But
should have that done pretty quick. I mean, I think
yeah,
we're already halfway
we're like
through
halfway
now,
through.
so yeah, yeah.
So
Okay.
just follow him and you guys can get more information. Subscribe to his channel and
Yep,
you'll get more stuff. He does movie reviews too.
I do. Yeah, Alan's movie talk. I
Alan's
do
movie
like
talk.
doing, again with TV. I like doing stuff like this. When
That should
there's
be
a show.
Caitlin's TV talk, man.
I
I
mean,
feel like I'm
hey,
left out.
yeah, yeah. You got to start your
Thanks,
own page,
Caitlin.
man.
It's
Yeah,
pretty sad.
we can simulcast, and do your channel and mine. So
No,
yeah.
but
All right. So yeah, we're gonna leave it off
yeah.
on that. It was a great discussion.
Yep.
So everyone have a great night. Like she said, like
Thank
and
you.
subscribe, and then we
Hmm.
will see you for the next stream.
Yep. Thank you. Bye,
All right.
guys.
Bye bye, everyone.